Hey guys, welcome back to the Junk Food Zombie channel. I have the last chapter in my 3-part series of reloading safety. I'm going to preface this again real quick. Reloading manual, have it, use it. Anything this says supersedes anything I say. If anything I say in this video contradicts what your reloading manual says, go by your reloading manual. This is more of an expert source of information than I am. I'm not an expert, I'm not a professional. I do this on my own time as a hobby. It's something I've been doing for a while, but these guys are the experts. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, today we're going to talk about primers and powder. Primers is pretty simple. Be careful with them, be gentle with them. They are like little miniature explosive devices. They all come in a little package. Looks like this, or similar to this. Sometimes they're a little smaller and they're oriented vertically in the package instead of flat. They need to be isolated. Keep them isolated. Do not put them in a bucket or a jar or a cup or anything like that and jostle them around. There was an instance, I'm assuming it was quite some time ago, but there was an instance where a worker who worked in a place where they made primers was carrying them around in the bucket, and the bucket dropped and it exploded. I mean, it was like a chain reaction, and I believe he was actually killed. So I know they're little bitty things, but they're no joke. They can be extremely dangerous, so handle them properly. Keep them in the packaging until they go into your press, and from there to there, nowhere else. Okay. Depending on your primer setup on your press, some people have little hand primers. It's going to go from your package into your hand primer or your tray. You have the little tray that orients them, but everything works a little differently. Some presses have little strips that they go into. This has got a tube. This you need to be careful with. This is a steel tube. There's a aluminum primer magazine inside here. I'll show you what it looks like. It looks very similar to this. And you load from here into there, and there's something like this inside there. That's just... you have large and small primers in this machine, so they need 2 different tubes that can go inside here. This is a steel tube meant to protect you. You can have primer detonations in here. I've read on forums guys who've had these that have taken these followers here and dropped them too hard onto the primers, and the primers detonated. They did something that caused the primers to detonate, not the fault of the machine, but the operator. And this follower went straight up and through the sheetrock on the ceiling. So, like I said, primers are no joke. Be careful with them. Put your follower in very gently. If you have a press that works this way, don't drop it in there. Set it gently. If you need to remove a primer, do not remove live primers. If you must, I'm telling you not to. Okay, from me, don't remove them. Toss them. If you must, if you insist on removing a live primer, eye protection, ear protection, every time. No exceptions. Obviously, your eyes are important, and you can damage your eyes, and they're pretty loud. You probably won't suffer any permanent hearing damage, but if you're going to, you might as well be safe. And the other rule is only in a press. If you have a single stage press, turret press, whatever, something that you can have slow, controlled movement of, so that you can gently feel that pin, touch that primer, and then gently press it out. It may still go off. There's a chance it's going to go off, so obviously that's why you need your eye and ear protection. If you have a kit like my little Lee loader kit that I use for my 4570, where you put the pin in the case and bang it with a hammer, don't do that. Please don't do that. It's going to set the primer off. So it's all common sense stuff, but I'm just putting it out for most of the beginners out there who are not familiar with this entirely yet, or who may not have read the reloading manual and the warnings in the manual. Okay, as far as primers, that's pretty much it. I'm glancing at my list here. I don't want to miss anything, so excuse me for not looking right at you guys all the time. Move on to powder. Number 1, most important thing with powder, as far as reloading safety, check your charges. When you're loading, you're going to have your case is going to go around to the powder station, and before you load that bullet in there, look at that. I might have a split in this case. I'm going to have to keep that aside and look at it. But before you load your bullet into that case, you look. I have lights on here. I have 2 lights. I have this light here that I use from Inline Fabrication that sits in the press, and that illuminates my pistol cases so I can see into them. When I use rifle cases, bottleneck rifle cases, I use this extra piece of lighting equipment here. It's called a lamp, and that helps me see into the bottleneck cartridges a little easier because they are tall and they are a little harder to see into. Always check that. Woo! I'm flinging brass everywhere. Always check that. I just dropped a pin out of my machine. Alrighty. Let's keep it going here. Yes, I'm a goof sometimes. Alright. So, always check your charges in your cases before you drop a bullet. I always get into that pattern I mentioned in the first reloading safety video, I believe. That's probably the most important thing as far as your safety when you're reloading as far as the process. Is to check your powder charge. Make sure it's in there. Make sure it's not double charged. Make sure it's not undercharged or not charged at all. You don't want to do that. There are devices for presses that have enough stations that will set an alarm if you don't have enough powder or too much powder or not any powder at all in there. But most powders, when you double charge them, will fill the case pretty good or even overflow. So pretty easy to see a double charge in most cases. Some revolver cases are long, so it's a little harder. 38 Special doesn't take much powder, so if you double charge it, just watch. Get used to what your powder charge looks like, and you'll be able to tell relatively easy. So always check your powder charges. Now, along with checking them, you want to weigh them. Whenever I start loading, even if I have my setup like on this one, this is set for a certain powder charge. When I put it away, when I'm done, I set it up again, I put the powder back in again. I like to weigh my charges. I will weigh the first one and see how close it is. I'll weigh like 5 in a row. If they're all coming out right, I'll load 5 rounds and I'll weigh another one. And then I'll check it. If that's good, I'll load 10 rounds, check it. If that's good, then I'll go another 25, 30 rounds, maybe even 50 rounds, and then weigh a couple at that point. And if they're good, I'll do the other 50. You want to check a bit in the beginning, make sure the powder measure is running consistently and that your charges are correct. Keep an eye on your powder measure while it's working. Everyone has a different setup. This has got a powder bar. It slides back and forth. So when you work this goes this way and drops a charge and then comes back to get the next charge. This one has loosened on me a couple times. I was loading and I moved my charge and I noticed that there was no charge in there. Or that there was a very low charge in there. And that's because this loosened up and this linkage popped out and it started to move but didn't move all the way. So it only dropped a small amount of powder or no powder at all. So if you have something like this, you might want to Loctite, put a little Loctite on it. Or in this case, the lock washer, I believe, was backwards because it loosened on me a couple times. I turned it around. It hasn't loosened since. So when I got this set up, I think that washer was on there backwards. So it's something you want to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on your equipment, but most importantly on that case. And make sure that it's getting the charge. Okay, because if it doesn't get a charge, you get a squib load. We all know squib loads are very dangerous. I discussed them before. Basically, that's your bullet doesn't have enough speed because there's no powder in the case, or there's very little powder in the case, and it gets stuck in your barrel. If you put another round in behind it and pull the trigger, all that pressure is going to build up in that barrel because that bullet's stopping the next one from going through. I play guitar. I need my fingers. I like my fingers. They're very important to me. I'm sure yours are too for whatever reason. So we like to keep our fingers. So just be very, very careful and watch that. I know I'm stressing that a lot, but it is of the utmost importance. Okay, so we're going to check our charges. We're going to weigh our charges. Storage of powder. They all come in usually some sort of plastic jug. They used to come in metal containers. I've got 1 or 2 up there. But they pretty much all come in these plastic jugs now, and they all have some sort of styrofoam seal on them. I try to leave that in there. It'll seal a little bit better because you can press that. Keep your powder in a regular kind of climate. Most importantly, dry. You don't want it to be in a damp place or a very humid place. Temperature fluctuation can vary pretty good. It can be pretty warm and pretty cool. You want to keep it generally in a kind of cool atmosphere, but humidity is the most important. Keep it sealed nice and tight and in the proper container, and it'll last a long time. You can smell when powder goes bad. It's not something I can explain to you without it sounding kind of like odd. It's hard to explain. It gets kind of like an acrid, weird kind of smell to it. If you're starting to reload, when you smell your powder, when you use your powder, just open it up and take a small whiff. Don't get your nose in there and, you know, huff it, but take a little whiff. You'll kind of get used to what powders are supposed to smell like. Every once in a while, you'll come across an older container of powder at a gun show or a store. I bought a couple recently that were pretty old. They're probably 10, 15 years old. They were still good because I can smell them and I know what they're supposed to smell like. So if you get used to that, you know if what you're getting is good. You don't want to use bad powder because it might not detonate or it might not have enough power or pressure, and you may get a squib load from that. So if you're not sure, don't buy it. Buy new powder. But that's how you store it. Like I said, cool, dry place, particularly in a nice sealed container. The last thing I want to discuss is knowing what powder is in here. Obviously, if you just came in the room, you set up, you poured your powder, you know what's in there. You load your rounds, you're done, you get rid of your powder, and that's it. Sometimes you have an emergency, you got to get up and go away. I got a little kid, sometimes, you know, there's an accident or something, or I got to go clean something up, or I got to help my wife with something, and you got to run away from your press, and something happens, you can't get back to it for a couple days. What powder do I have in here? Well, every time I use a powder, all of my powder stays on that shelf. Anytime I use a powder, I take it down, I put it by my press. That's the powder that's in my press. No powder leaves that shelf unless it goes into here or it's being moved out of the room. It's an easy way to keep track of what's in your press. It's an easy way to keep track of what you're loading with. I also write it down on my little load data sheet before I start loading. I write down most of all the information that I can write down ahead of time, like the cases I'm using, what bullets I'm using, what powder I'm using, and the charge I'm going to be using. That's all written down ahead of time. So I know I'm using, say in this case, unique. So I write that down, and then if I walk away and I come back, I've got unique in there. But the best way for me, the easiest way to be sure, is to take this powder container, whatever is in there, and that goes here. Nothing leaves that shelf unless it's in this powder or it's out of the room. And nothing that's down here is something that's not in my powder measure. That's how I do it. Whatever works for you, whatever's the best and simplest way for you to know what's in here is fine. A lot of you experienced guys, you don't need all this. You know this. You've developed your own ways. This is more for the guys who are just starting, haven't been doing it too long. Little tips like that might help some guys who've been doing it for a while, but this whole thing's basically geared towards people who want to learn a little more. They're starting off. So, we're pretty good with that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment below if you guys have been doing this if you guys have been reloading for a long time and you notice I missed something, or I may have said something incorrect. Please point it out in the comments. If you liked it, tell me, whatever. I like feedback. I like to know if you guys are enjoying this. If you are, I keep kind of doing things the way you like, and that I can enjoy. If I'm doing something that you guys think is terribly wrong or just bad, let me know and I'll take it under advisement, and we'll see if we can't make some adjustments to make it better. That's about it. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate everybody who's been watching, and I've been getting more subscribers, and I'm hoping that I'm helping you guys out. That's what I want to do, is help people out. So you guys have a good night or day, whatever time you happen to be watching this. Right here, it's nighttime. But I'll catch you guys on the next one, and I appreciate you all again. Thank you. Have a good one.
Empty. That stinks.